What was I thinking of? Turning my camera off.
No, that's
There we
cool.
go.
No, put
I'm
yours
doing
on.
that.
Put yours on. That's all right. It's just like you've got the B now, and I've got the OBS symbol. You know what I mean?
Okay, well, you aren't showing on the stream.
Okay,
On
good,
the stream, there's only me.
good.
However, there's the ugly side of my cupboard, which I'm not that keen on. Let me see if I can get rid of this ugly cupboard.
Well, everybody's used to the cupboard. That's where your cat jumps up on. I mean,
Yeah,
the show's not the same without the cat.
I know. And where is the cat?
He'll come in once he decides it's
Reckon,
time.
once he hears us talking.
The movie star has to show up freaking late. You know that, right? Like he has to be freaking. He has to be sensibly late to the affair.
Let's hope that he does come. Okay, so I'm hating this. My mouth is out of sync with my talking.
It's
Wow. I wonder how that's going to work. Why is that happened all of a sudden? It has never been like that on this computer. I told Callum about it, and he said that he would have to uninstall the operating system and reinstall it. You see, it doesn't do this on Teams, and that's how he set it up to work. He set it up for Teams to work. But now nobody wants to use Teams, and so I'm kind of stuck with these other things that, I don't know. And I don't understand why it would be any different. Why can't I just use Element? Why does it have to be set up for Teams? That doesn't make any sense to me. It's just a computer. Why doesn't it just work?
I got an idea for you. Now, up on top where it says Duality with bobdub, you see that little clock right there?
Yeah.
Put
performance
your mouse.
seat.
Okay, go click on that performance setting and set the performance to just before best performance instead of high quality.
Ah, this one. Okay. So like the first quarter. Okay.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's going to work. No, that makes it worse.
Yeah, I see that. Okay, so put it to the one right next to it, closer to the high quality.
All right. Now then. It sort of works.
A little bit better.
Better, a little bit better.
Now, what happens if you go to highest quality?
What happens if I go to highest quality? Does that change anything? Does it look to you like it changes anything? I still see lag.
It actually gets worse at highest quality. Yeah.
Let's go to 3/4 and see, and stay with 3/4.
Sounds good.
Oh, okay. It's better for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if nothing else, I can edit it in Blender and get it synced. So I did it to the last one. So.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right.
Now let me go get a smoke real quick and everything.
Yes.
Before we start jumping into it.
Okay.
I've got the recording going, just so you know.
Oh, you're already recording?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to get some cool behind the scenes footage of us acting ridiculous. Which we've done a good job so far. Just
okay.
You know.
Set this and try that. Yes, that was pretty good.
It was us in our natural habitat, and we pulled it off.
Okay, cool. I'll see you in a little bit.
All right. All right.
Do Better says that he's going to eat and he thinks that he'll be there on time, but he might just be a spectator at first.
Oh, he's never. Well, he stays quiet for a long time, but he's never just a spectator. Like, you get him going, he's always fired up.
He gets into it. Yeah, he does. Yeah. So
I'll be right back.
Okay, see ya. Oh, okay. Why? Cancel. I'm sorry, WhatsApp. I don't have time for you. Hmm. Hmm. Bobdub. View your channel. Okay. Well. Oh, okay. We're not going to do it. On Bobdub, we're doing it on the wonderful world of weirdness. Which is why I can't see it. View your channel. Very good. And live. Alright, upcoming. Very nice. So, nice. Okay. Alright, and this here is. Roger, I want to ask you some questions.
Okay, I'm back.
Awesome. How do you smoke a cigarette so quick?
I have
Like, do you
to
eat it?
I have to practice at it. Like I used to work in warehouses and factories where they only give you like 10 minutes. So I had to figure out how to smoke 2 cigarettes in 15 minutes.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I used to do one for 7 minutes, one cigarette for 7 minutes. So,
That's how I did it. I had to break them down 7 minutes for freaking each cigarette.
yeah, and light the one from the other?
No, I couldn't
Not
do that.
good.
I'm not a barbarian.
Everybody's got a little bit of barbarian in them.
Yes, they do.
So, I was going to ask you, I was talking to Otto about doing another Shakespeare um, talk.
That'd be cool.
And he's keen. Are you keen?
Yeah, I'm good. I can do it.
Okay, so we can set it up sometime.
There's other things we didn't discuss too, like DeVere. I think that's something that does need to be discussed because the weirdest part about him is where he's buried at. And Mark brought something up that was interesting, but I did the research and I found out they didn't start letting popular people get buried in the abbey until the frickin' 1800s. Before that, it was all
Wow.
royalty. So what's DeVere doing buried in the abbey?
Mm. Somebody's son, hey?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that gets
It's
into
fascinating.
the Francis
Mm-hmm.
Francis Bacon, the Baconian theory, where
Right.
they think that he's the son of Elizabeth. And the
Of
Bacon,
Elizabeth.
yeah, and the Baconians, they're real high-minded. They have these hopes, and they think that it's the Baconian or Francis Bacon, but in reality, it's De Vere who's the illegitimate son of Queen Elizabeth or Victoria,
Interesting.
whichever. No, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, yeah. So, on the last show that I was doing with Otto, the one that I'm just editing now, we were talking about Elizabeth and
Mm-hmm.
how she chopped Mary's head off.
Oh yeah, Bloody Mary. Yeah, see the Bloody Mary. That's good stuff. See, you guys are talking about some good stuff.
So we were talking about that, and then we were talking about Putin and how everybody says what a savage Putin is. But like our queen, just a couple of years back, chopped off her sister's head.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, who are we really to point fingers?
Well, the English are barbarians. I mean, they're very intelligent. Don't get me wrong, but they're barbaric. The way they dealt with people, you know. I mean, if they didn't like you and they were like a duke, they would just,
Yeah.
if you were in their castle, they'd drop you down a hole. They
Yeah.
had little square holes in the corner, and they just drop you down there.
Yeah.
They'd let you
But
die.
that's no different from anybody else. Everybody says the English are so savage, but everybody had their own little savage ways.
But you got to understand, they kept doing it up until about the 17 or 1800s. I mean, like they, it took them a long time to get over that barbarism. I mean, really, it did. Like,
Oh, I'm fairly sure that if you relaxed the laws, it would come straight back again. I think that people are pretty disgusting wherever you go in the world.
Yeah, I gotta agree on that. I haven't found any kind of history that doesn't show that, like everywhere, all over the world.
Mm,
So
mm.
you're right about that.
The other thing that I wanted to ask you, I will go, and we'll set up. I'll try and set up another one with another Shakespeare with Otto. Another thing that I wanted to ask you was about common ground. Do you know about common ground?
Yeah, safe spaces, common ground. There's that stems that stems from the Jewish traditions. It's that they believe in freaking public grounds, public space,
Mm.
and it came from that, which is a lot of it's written in the Talmud, if you read it, and
Oh, okay.
they were real picky about it, and that kind of stems from them, and then it kind of migrated into everybody's society. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
it's all over the world. Like public spaces. Have you ever heard of that term?
No.
Like when you go to town and you're in town and you're going to all the
Oh, right.
stores.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
There's
Okay. Yes.
there's
Yes.
laws set up about how you're supposed to behave in those areas.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So I'm talking about a slightly different thing. I don't really know about it. It's something. It's an initiative by a media company called Human Events,
Mm-hmm.
where they have this. I think they do it on college campuses. It's like a debate, but instead of being a debate where people argue for their own point of view, it's like a debate where you find similarities between the different points of views.
Oh no, I never heard of that. That sounds
Haven't heard of that.
ridiculous.
Why?
Just because I just wanted to say it. Who wants to discuss common grounds? You know what similarities? I mean, come on, seriously. Let's just sit and argue about who should be president of the United States. No, I'm just joking. I'm not serious.
You know I'm a girl.
Yeah, I
You
know.
figured out that I'm a girl.
I just, I'm just joking. But yeah, that sounds pretty nice. It'd be interesting.
I would like to know how it works, because when I first heard it, I had the same reaction as you, of like, wouldn't that just be really boring to just say,
It
oh
would be
yeah, no, I
hard.
agree with you. Oh yeah, no, I agree with you. Oh, okay, I agree with you. Like there isn't a conversation when you're just sitting there saying you agree.
Well, I mean, you do realize like we're doing a stream about duality, right? Like most people aren't going to be freaking knocking the doors down to freaking come see our stream about duality. You know, what I mean, like, oh man, I don't want to hear that stuff. You know? I mean, there's people that are interested. Don't get me wrong, but not like a mass amount of gathering. Even though
Uh,
we are getting a lot of people watching it.
are we?
Yeah, the views on freaking Wonderful World of Weirdness is really good for this show. They're really
Good for
good.
this show. I see 236 on Summer Todd and
Hmm.
184 on Into the Abyss.
Yeah, that dropped. That was actually up in the first two were up in
Wow.
the 300s.
Yeah, 349 I see on the second episode, on the one streamed 7 days ago.
Mm. Seven. Oh
Oh,
yeah, that's
that's,
the one the first one I put on Wonderful World of Weirdness, the one with all of us and
oh,
me, you,
okay.
and Vince and Julian, because
Oh, right.
it was on my channel, but I didn't have it on Wonderful World of Weirdness. So
Weirdness. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's really, really awesome viewership. 349.
yeah, people love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, well. And I think that we've had a drop off in viewership, or everybody has over Christmas and January. But now the kids are all back at school. I don't know, but you don't have summer Do you have some? Oh, you're in the middle of winter, so you wouldn't be having summer holidays in the middle of your winter.
No,
Our kids down here have all gone back to school, so I'm expecting viewership here to start picking up.
Cool. With
Yeah.
the viewership too, we're having a slight dispute with the viewers because they're wanting the UFOs and the aliens and the ghosts and all that stuff. But then, like, a majority of them that come in are freaking trolls,
Oh, right. Yes.
you know.
Yes.
But like, I've had a couple of them that had some, good criticisms and debunking and stuff like that. But a lot of them are trolls that just want to say
Mm.
stuff. So it's like,
Yeah. Yeah. And
and
that's difficult, because you don't want to ignore your audience, but neither do you want to be misled by people who just want to be nasty.
well, I'm not a nice person to those guys. I'm like John. He's Mr. Nice Guy. You know what I mean? I'll tell him, I hate trolls, and then I freaking mute them from the channel, like, because I don't see a purpose for allowing trolls to just run rampant on your
No,
comment section.
no,
So,
no, no, no. Don't feed the trolls.
all right.
Absolutely.
So I
Yeah.
I mentioned it to John, or yeah, I mentioned it on John on Old Men Talking, and I
Yeah.
told him, I was like, I don't do that with like John does. I'm not gonna be nice about it and just let it go. If you're being a troll in comments, you get muted and that's it. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. I think
So
that's good. I mean, it's your channel. You don't need anybody just coming in and shitting in the middle of your lounge floor,
right.
you know?
So
So, yeah.
everybody everybody is kind of, well, like, now we're talking about it too. So I mean, it's just, well, I don't, if that's the way it's just gonna be with it.
Hmm.
I do it on all my channels. I have no problem with it.
Yeah, no, me neither.
Everybody
Yeah, no,
calls
me
it.
neither. You see, oh, well, I don't think we have time to talk about it really, but I don't believe that free speech is nasty speech. I
Yeah.
think that you can have free speech and still be polite, and I don't think that I need to put up with somebody who wants to be an asshole to me.
Right.
Just
Exactly.
doesn't work for me.
I just found a dilemma I have though. I don't know how am I. Yeah, I can do that. Never mind. I was wondering if I could pop my notes up and still be able to see the stream, but I
Oh, you
found it.
can?
Yeah, I
Okay,
found
cool.
it.
All right, so I think we're going to start streaming. It's 12.
Okay.
Ready to go? I hope this is going to work. Okay, so then 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Duality. It is episode 4 today, and once again, I am joined by Roger Hansen of Roger Hansen Live. Hey, Roger.
Hello. How you doing, Bob Dub?
Pretty good. I think I'm settling down now after my great adventures, starting to come back to reality. So, yeah, it's good to be here with you. And we've got a really great show lined up again today. So far, we have on this program, we have looked at masculinity and femininity. And we've seen the differences of them, and that we both are part masculine, part feminine, and we use those masculine and feminine skills in our everyday life. And then last week, we took a deep dive into some of the ancient sermons and prayers that give us opportunities to exercise both our masculine and feminine aspects. And so this week, we thought that we would go a little bit further into the nitty-gritty of duality and talk about the duality of man. And I thought that I would pop over here to, let me see, I think this is the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, and read you the actual definition of duality before we get going. It says here that duality is the quality or state of having two different or opposite parts or elements. dualism. It gives a quote here from Thomas Matthews. That duality, sophistication paired with authenticity on the wine list, simplicity spiced with creativity on the menu, gives the Maria energy and distinctive character. And then there's another little quote here from Stephen Hawking that says, by the wave-particle duality of quantum mechanics, light can be regarded as both a wave and a particle. So that's a kind of like an interesting sort of like 1,000-foot view, if you like, of what the actual sort of scientific literary meaning of duality is. And we're going to delve a little bit deeper into that and discuss duality and dualism, in fact. And I thought that we would start off, Roger, I would start off by just asking you about the duality of man, the concept that refers to the contradictory and the complex nature of human beings. How do you view it?
Well, it suggests that every person has both good and evil within them, for one thing, and that their actions and choices reveal their dominant personality. So you have that going on, and then you have the duality of man being used to contrast different views, reactions to the same topic or situation that's taken place. So, like me and you, when we're having a conversation, your point of view and my point of view could contrast from one another. You know what I'm saying? So that's a duality right there. Then there's situations, and the way we react to them, different reactions for different situations that occur. So that right there is another thing that I know. I know that it's common in a lot of literature, philosophy, and psychology as well. So that's one thing that I get into. And then the differences between dualism and duality, a lot of people have an issue with that. And I haven't really read up too much on that recently, and I almost forgot this too. But there is a difference between dualism and duality. So that's another thing that I'd like to point out.
Point out, right, yes. So we have this good and evil within us. Is there any sort of like explanation of where it comes from or why we should have a dual nature?
Well, dualism and duality, I believe, comes from ancient beliefs that go farther back than just the Judaism or Muslim beliefs. Zoroastrianism is a good example, and I know we talked about discussing that next week, because I need to do a little bit better research on it, but like I said, I haven't been reading up on this for about a year and a half, but so I want to kind of get it all back down in my head. But that's where it all started from, ancient beliefs like that, which is Indo-Aryan, which was changed to Indo-European, because the term got vilified during World War I, basically. And dualism and duality stems from Zoroastrianism, which was like the ancient Persians' belief. They're the ones that believed in a lot of this through Zoroastrianism. And duality, it refers to the state of being divided into two parts or aspects, whereas dualism, well, actually, two aspects. Okay, I'll just stick with that. Duality it refers to the concept of two complementary yet opposing forces or ideas, okay, that exist simultaneously. So it's the concept of a complementary, uh, you know, forces or ideas. You know what I'm saying? Um,
Mm-hmm.
Examples of duality um, you can see in various aspects of life. Okay, and that has to do with stuff like light and dark, good and evil, yin and yang. All right. So now you have that. That's duality. Then you have dualism, and that is different slightly than what duality is. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, it's the philosophical belief that the universe is made up of two opposing and irreducible principles. Okay, so they're opposing and they're irreducible.
Mm-hmm.
Now, now, it's the idea that there are two separate and distinct realities. Okay, and that they are in a constant state of conflict. All right. So you have
Yes.
two, or you have two separate and distinct realities, and they're in a constant state of conflict. And a good example of dualism uh, includes mind over matter, okay, which you hear a lot
Yes.
of, and then good and evil. So dualism deals with good and evil, you know what I mean, as well as duality. So they both kind of deal with it. But the the thing about dualism is you got to look at the way it's written. Okay, now when ISM is added to the
Mm-hmm.
end of a world, that means that it's not a passive word. You know what I mean? So whenever you look at it, you have to look at dualism as being and or duality as being the passive word for it. Okay,
Right.
usually any words that have ism at the end isn't passive. So, and
Mm-hmm.
I know we were going to move forward, but this is one of the parts where you have to look at the feminine and the freaking masculine aspects, okay? Because the passive uh, form of the word is a feminine aspect. So that kind of goes into that area that we've already previously discussed.
Okay.
That's
Okay. That's interesting. Right. So duality is the feminine aspect, and dualism is the masculine aspect.
basically, yeah. It's yeah, it's complementary. Duality is it's complementary
Right.
and opposing forces or
Mm.
ideas. Now it's necessary for balance and harmony. All right, and then
Okay.
it has to do with light and dark, good and evil, yin and yang.
Mm-hmm.
So then you have dualism. It's irreducible principles, and they're always in conflict. All right, it's a constant state of conflict, and that's like I said, mind over matter. I believe we were talking before in the last episode where, yeah, you have to speak mind, or it has to be mind over matter, but at the same time, you have to be able to think on emotional levels. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yes. Right. Right. So is this somehow related to the material world versus the spiritual world?
well, that also kind of gets into Zoroastrianism. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, um,
We'll wait for that then, shall we?
yeah, we can. It's the best I can say is it's not as much spiritual as it is mental. Ahura Mazda
Right.
explains that. I don't know if you've heard of the term Asha.
No.
Okay, so yeah, we'll go over that in the next episode.
Okay.
But
All right.
but that really is important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So they're two separate and distinct realities that are in a constant state of conflict. So
That's
that
dualism. That's
that's dualism.
right.
But duality
Is complementary.
is complementary. So duality would be masculinity and femininity, and dualism would be good and evil.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right?
Well, good and evil is in both of them. Dualism dualism would be more of activism. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
when you know how we were talking about the masculine aspects is getting up and doing something. Things like that.
Right.
Dualism would be a form of the masculine aspects where you would actually get up and do something. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Hold on a
So you
minute.
would take action.
Yeah. So hold on a minute. I gotta go take care of something real quick. Okay. Could you?
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay. All right. So I'm finding this to be very interesting, but a little bit complicated. I'm not quite sure that I get these subtle distinctions. It seems to me that duality is referring to a two-ness. There's a state of division, and two things exist at the same time, and they complement each other. Right. So that's light and dark, or good and evil. Right. Then duality. Okay, so that's duality, but then dualism is the state of conflict. I guess that's where the masculinity comes in, the more active aspect.
All right, I'm back.
Okay, awesome. I'm just musing to myself. I think I'm starting to get it. So it seems like this is this is very much terminology here.
Yes, exactly. It really is. And it's really when it comes to mind and matter. Okay. Um, you what's inside of your mind is visualized. Okay. It
Right.
it doesn't become matter until it becomes a part of reality of the real world. Okay.
Okay.
So matter is kind of what goes into Zoroastrianism, where Ahura Mazda created the ideal world. Okay. Now,
Yes.
this ideal world is a world where everything is complementary to one another, and they do have opposing forces, but these opposing forces don't allow actions to happen which causes a person to suffer because of that action. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Mm-hmm.
ideal world. But in reality, when it becomes matter, when that ideal world becomes matter, you have these forces that are in conflict with one another.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And yeah, there you go.
So the ideal world is the world of thoughts and spiritual things, is it?
Right.
But the real world is here, where we have to deal with matter and accidents and suffering and pain and all those things.
Right. That's dualism.
Interesting. Okay. Very interesting. All right. So the Stoics, like Plato, regarded matter as passive.
I thought that was interesting too. So, um,
Very interesting. So matter has a feminine aspect to it, does it? And changing matter is the masculine part of it.
That is what really throws me off because, like, I think maybe at some point or another we need to talk to Vince and Julian about that because that is a very interesting thing, you know. And I call them Stoics, but I know they're Stoics, you know what I mean? But the Stoics also believed in that too. But
Mm-hmm.
when I seen that, that kind of stuck out to me. I'm like, I don't.
Mm.
And you got to understand, Plato was Greek, okay? So what I've been referring to is
Yes,
Zoroastrianism,
yes,
which is Persian, and the Greeks didn't
yes.
like the Persians too well. So
Right.
you, you got to take.
So, did the Persians come before the Greeks? Was their civilization an older one than the Greek civilization?
Um, no. As a matter of fact,
No.
they stem from the same origin. It's just like
Oh.
it's just like with Hindu or Buddhism and Hinduism and all
Mm-hmm.
that. They stem from the same origin as what Zoroastrianism stems from. It's the Indo-European, Indo-Aryan uh, civilizations, culture, whatever. I'm not quite sure how to classify
Mm-hmm.
that, but that's where they all come from. Uh,
Fascinating. Okay, so let's move on to some examples. Can you give me examples of where both the concepts of dualism and duality are incorporated?
a good example um, is a belief system that incorporates both dualism and duality. Um, let's see. Have you ever heard of that Vita Vedanta school of Indian philosophy?
I don't know anything about it, but yes, I have heard it mentioned.
Okay, now I don't know too much about it at all, but uh, they espouse a dualism between God and the universe by
Mm-hmm.
theorizing the existence of two separate realities. And that's where that reality part comes from.
Right.
So you have two separate
Okay.
realities. Now, the first and the most important reality is the Vishnu, and I know you know that in Brahman now,
Right. Yes.
and it's the supreme self, which is God, the absolute
Mm-hmm.
truth of the universe, and the independent reality. Now, the second reality is the universe, no, and the living beings within it. Okay. Now, before we go on to there, I was wondering, you know a lot about Vishnu and Brahman, right?
No, not very much at all. I know that they are basically the supreme self, the what we would call God.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, not really too much more detail than that. Just that it was a very, very abstract idea in
Okay,
that culture.
right. And
Mm.
see, a lot of this stuff is abstract ideas. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And that's the one thing you have to deal with when it comes to this idea is these abstract ideas like poetry, things like
Hmm.
that. So that you even have to deal with that with Zoroastrianism too. So um, and that's what it comes down to. It's the okay. It's easy to freaking well, I guess translate, you know, the words and stuff, but freaking to understand it, you have to understand the philosophy behind it. So,
Yes.
and
Yes.
a lot of these ideas have to do with philosophy. So,
Mm.
in order to understand it, you have to understand the philosophy behind the culture, behind the
Mm.
society, and
Mm.
understand what's going on there. So, um, Vishnu and Brahman are Hindu, right?
Yes.
Okay. So with the Hindu beliefs, they stem from the same place, the same origin. Okay, but
Mm-hmm.
they didn't freaking like break off from one another. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
Yes.
but they come from the same belief system as one another. So that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
interesting there. Now, now the Veda, yeah, the Veda,
Mm.
Vedanta. Okay, it also incorporates the concept of duality. Now,
Yes.
it acknowledges the existence of complementary yet opposing forces within the universe too. Okay, it does
Yes.
acknowledge that. It
Yes.
recognizes the duality of the individual soul, the Jivatman, and the universal soul, the Paramatman, or
Mm-hmm.
Paramatman, and the
Yes.
interplay between them. Okay. Now, with Zoroastrianism, you have spirits that are one opposes um, Asha, and then the other one uh, promotes it. Okay,
Mm.
so you have those forces working
Mm.
in the background too. So
I found that very interesting when I was listening to that video you sent this morning, where he was mentioning that about those two forces that exist within us, because that's quite similar, I thought, to Freud's idea, where Freud says that we have the will to live and the will to die, or the death, the will to death, maybe. And
mm-hmm.
he says that all good behavior comes out of the will to live, and all bad behavior comes out of the will for death. And that sounded very similar to the Zoroastrianism idea.
Yeah,
But it
it,
seems that Zoroastrianism is far more spiritually motivated, and Freud was motivated just by science, by psychology.
well, you've also got to take into consideration Freud wasn't the only one that read up on Zoroastrianism. Like
Right.
you have Nietzsche. Okay, now Nietzsche got a lot of criticism because he wrote the book God is Dead. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why he got so much hassle from it is because people didn't read the book and they didn't understand what was being said. You know, we
Yes.
killed God basically,
Yes.
and when he was writing during that time period, he loved Zoroastrianism. He researched it, he studied it, he knew
Right.
what it was. You know, so
Okay.
he got vilified too. Like I was talking about, the word Aryan got
Mm-hmm.
vilified because of World War II. Nietzsche got vilified because Hitler uh, really looked up to him and enjoyed his writings. He actually manipulated his writings so that he could freaking uh, do what he intended on doing, you know? And
Wow. Really?
yeah,
Gosh.
a lot of his
Hmm.
writings involved that. So it's interesting how all that did work out, is all I'm
Mm.
saying. Like, it was a lot more involved what than just Freud. You know what I mean? There was a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people.
Right.
There's a
There's
lot of
that
people
whole
today.
school.
Yeah, there's a
Right. Right.
so
That seems to underline your point of duality.
right.
It's like these good and bad things are all mixed up together. You can't separate them.
Mm-hmm.
They're all in there.
Well,
All the good thoughts and all the bad thoughts, all sort of like in one great big pot.
I it's just like recently, you know, when we had conversations on this, and I'm not going to get too much into it, but it's an issue that does need to be mentioned. You know, we were discussing it in chat, and it caused a lot of frustration and anger. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
which it did. But at the same time, it's something that does need to be discussed. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because we have people living in the world today who freaking believe that freaking good oversees evil, which that's what's been taught to us. Okay,
Yes.
we've been taught that good will always prevail. Everybody
Yeah.
believes that, but
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody believes that. You know what I mean? There's other people who believe that good is a force, a power, just like evil
Yes.
is a force and a power, and they both have the same amount of power. It just
Mm-hmm.
you have the decision to decide which path you want to take.
Hmm.
You know.
I think that it's really interesting and difficult to have these conversations because of the way our language works. I often think that when we talk, we say, this is the way it is. And we forget that we don't know what the way it is. So,
Right.
one example is to say, like somebody said to me yesterday, God wrote the tablets on the 10 commandments on tablets. And I said, I'm sorry, I just can't believe that. I can't believe that a spirit being came down to earth and wrote things on rock. For me, I can see that a person could say, God told me this, or God intended this, or God prompted me, or whatever. But that isn't a reality of God put writing in a book. God maybe inspired it or something. And I think that it's really important to hold these belief systems very lightly in our hands and to
Mm-hmm.
know that everything we know now is going to be understood differently in 100 years' time. And these insistence on this is the way it is something that can really divide us and make this false dichotomy of this is the way it is, this is the way that's right, and this is the way that's wrong. Whereas, do we actually know that what is right is right? It seems right now in our current understanding. But we could be wrong.
Yeah.
In all reality, we could be wrong.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the I love how you said that because it's the thing of it is like for me, okay, in my personal beliefs, all right, I can't debate on if God wrote something on a piece of stone or not. You know what I mean? But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, I have to use what's called discernment. Okay. Now,
Yes.
now I've been talking about the Zoroastrian, so I might as well just use them as an example again. So,
Yeah.
okay. Now, all through Zoroastrian writing, you'll see where they're talking about the well, they're talking about discernment. But not one time
Yes.
will you ever hear, or I haven't heard to this point, anybody who discusses it mention the word discernment. I've never once so far heard the word discernment being brought up. But
Interesting.
the weird part about Zoroastrianism is if you listen to these people, you'll hear it everywhere. Okay?
Yeah.
It's about discernment and being able to understand the true from the false. Okay? So, and like I said, next week we'll get into Zoroastrianism and we'll talk about truth. You know what I mean? What is
Yes.
truth?
What
Very,
is truth?
you know what I mean? But that that's what it is. Okay. I'm really big on history. I've read all the things that they've done to the Bible. I've read all the
Mm-hmm.
things that they've done to all these writings. The Phoenicians, okay, they literally decimated everything that the Phoenicians believed in. So the only thing we get from the Phoenicians is what the Greeks talk about.
Yes.
Okay. So we can actually like get little bits and pieces from what archaeologists discover. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I've learned to discern the true from the false by collecting this information in my head, and I know that this isn't true because I found this out. Okay, this is using my mind. This,
Yes.
okay, I'm not living in a fairy tale where things are made up, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what I think is important. You know what I mean? Being able to
Absolutely.
discern the
To
truth from the
discern.
false.
Yes.
So
I have a very dear friend who grew up a Christian and found the Christian way to be terribly persecutory. You couldn't do this and you couldn't say that, and this was a sin, and that was, which is completely different to my experience. But in his experience and living under that tyranny of religion, he couldn't at all understand any of the teachings about Jesus. It just didn't make any sense to him, all this talk about love and everything. And so when he was a teenager, he left the Christian church and he investigated, I think, a lot of the Dharmic religions, I think around yoga and the yogis, and and found peace, found himself a way forward through that perception of truth, of the cosmic law.
yeah.
And now, just recently, in the last 3 or 4 years, he's suddenly met this person that he identifies as being Jesus, that he couldn't meet when he was a Christian. And I find that so fascinating. Okay, part of it is just the words we put on concepts. And if we're brought up as a child and we're given these certain words, we'll probably use those words later when we're an adult. But the other part of it is this discernment thing that you're bringing up, and this thing that there is some sort of ultimate truth. And there is a way that we need to be responsible for discerning that ourselves. Nobody can teach that to us. It has to come from our own heart, our own soul. Don't
Mm-hmm.
you think?
Yeah. I I do believe that, and it's like I said, I don't really like I don't freaking support or renounce any kind of religion. Earlier, I said I renounced all religions, and I should be careful about saying that because I don't like to criticize religions at all either. So I don't favor them, and I don't freaking dislike them. But the thing of it is like when you look at these terms and you look at these principles, okay, they go farther and farther back. Like
Yes.
every time you take a step in history backwards, you start finding that these principles have been here.
Yes.
Okay, they've been here since the beginning. Dualism, if you want to get real technical about it, I was thinking about it yesterday, but the Epic of Gilgamesh, okay?
Yeah.
Now, for me, where I see the first form of dualism was when Gilgamesh, the story about Gilgamesh and Enkidu, okay? No,
Mm-hmm.
now, with the Sumerians, they took pride in their cities, building cities and living in them and being a community. Now, building their walls and stuff like that. Whereas Enkidu, he was a barbarian. He lived in the woods and ran with the animals. Okay?
Yeah.
So, you have the conflict there between nature and the city. That's
Yeah.
That's duality. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Dualism, whatever.
Yeah.
I haven't really researched into it too much to tell if it's duality or dualism, but that's another thing that goes. I mean, it goes all the way back. This is the Sumerians. This is supposed to be the first civilization. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
there he
Yes.
is, Mr. Dewback.
Hello.
How you doing?
Oh, look who's here.
How's it going? Sorry I'm late.
I'm glad you're
No,
here.
that's okay. Welcome. We're getting deep into it.
Awesome. Awesome.
You able to listen to any of it?
The video you dropped?
Yeah,
No, this. Oh, the
I
video.
read I read the thing, the duality stuff.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you been listening to the stream, Chris?
No, I'm just getting in.
Just
Oh, you,
jumping in, right?
you missed
Yeah.
all the good stuff.
Hmm. Of course, which I tried not to do, but then I got a phone call, so I couldn't jump in until I got the call done. So sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. It's lovely to have you here. It's lovely to have you
One
here.
one of those dualities in life, you gotta deal with work, and then you gotta have time with your friends.
Well,
That's the
well,
way it goes.
the good
Yes.
part is now bobdub can ask you all sorts of cool questions.
Cool.
Awesome. Do better. How do you understand duality in the world?
um. Well, like you were the notes on what we're talking about here, duality and dualism. You have the duality of life that's kind of inherent in nature, and then you have the dualisms that have been uh, not fully man-made, but there's a lot of connotations that are put on different aspects of life that are definitely a dualism.
Mm.
And
Isms.
the
Sorry,
way
carry
that
on.
the way that I see it is those dualisms are more of a tool that we should be using to experience the duality of life. And a lot of people try to put too much into the tools and think that that's the way. You have to, you know, abide by the tool, not just use it like we're supposed to. But yeah, so
I'm glad that you mentioned the
that's
word
kind of my
tool.
summation.
Yeah.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, glad that I mentioned the word tool.
Yeah, that's something I completely forgot. We've been sitting here talking, and like that's a really good way of looking at it. Like I was saying earlier, that it's also like a activist kind of thing, like getting up and doing an action. You know.
Well, it's like the thought of separation and the experience of separation because we're truly connected. So the actual, you know, bigger scheme of it, we're all connected. So really, we're not separated. So we're just using that separation as a tool so that we have our self expression and self experience, stuff like that.
That's a really fascinating way of describing it. I mean, we are all these separate entities. We each have our own body and our own mind.
Hmm.
And yet, at another level that we can't perceive, we are all one body and all one soul.
Truly.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting.
And see that.
We were just mentioning religion just now and talking about different religions. And it's almost like what you were saying about tools. Like religions could be a tool if we used them properly. But
Hmm.
if we don't use them properly, then they're more a weapon of mass destruction.
Yep, they're wrecking crew.
Yep.
Hmm.
I like that too. How you said like with art and individuality, like we were also kind of going over Zoroastrianism, and I was reading through some of the stuff and everything, and it's really weird how that religion is set up, because like you can clearly see the freaking dualism and the duality kind of interplaying with one another. You know what I mean? It's just the
Hmm.
strangest religion I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I want to look more into it. I pulled that video up that you dropped a link for. Have to- I've I think I may have heard it very loosely, way out. I don't know when type of thing, but I've heard something about it.
Mm.
Not much.
Well, just to let you know, you'll probably heard it through like ancient astronauts and stuff like that.
Could have been, probably. It's more like, yeah, I just heard the word used, thrown around type thing.
Which, by the way, my nephew told me that Mark Edworthy looks like the guy off of Ancient Astronaut with the weird hairdo.
Oh, boy.
So, I thought that was cool.
My mother
I
was
recently made a
so
meme with... Go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, I was just going to say, my mother was so enchanted with Mark Edworthy. She took the phone from me when I showed her the stream that you were doing. I think it was the round table maybe that you were doing. And she took the phone and she looked at him and she says, "Oh, he's so lovely." So I don't think she would agree with you. your nephew.
I
Was
was going to say, I just recently made a meme about, with that guy doing the whole aliens thing with the crazy hair, got the hands, and it said, it's not shadow banning, or I'm not saying it's shadow banning, but it's shadow banning.
Explain that duality to me, DB.
So he's got the famous quote like, "I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens." So, yeah.
Okay, sorry, my brain is
yeah.
right.
When he's always showing the paintings and stuff with the spaceship in the background.
Yep.
Oh, I love that. Now, when your mom seen that, was that the episode where we were talking about him wearing the bow tie?
I think that was the one.
Oh wow!
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it was busy. It was busy over there, so we didn't have time to sit and watch things. So we just got snippets of bits and pieces. But so yes, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dan was saying he'd look like a Chippendale dancer. So.
No,
Yeah,
I don't think my mother saw that at all. No, I just can't think what's going there.
Why you want to put such dirty thoughts or visuals and shit like that's crazy?
Well,
Why?
I didn't do it. It was just. It was like Dan, the one that said it. I was like, because I told him he would look good with a suit and a bow tie, you know, and that's when Dan said that. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Oh, it's so odd how people dress up just to get undressed.
Yeah.
This is a very strange world we live in.
That was hilarious.
Too funny.
Okay, so it's not shadow banning at all. It's just agents.
Not saying it's shadow banning, but it's shadow banning.
It's an echo chamber, dude.
Yep. For
We
sure.
shadow ban ourselves into our own corners, I think. So one of the things that we talk about when we talk about duality and dualism, we talk about complementary and what's the other word, Roger? Complementary and opposing forces.
Yeah.
But this isn't really about morality, is it? It's almost just an amoral situation. Like shadow banning. Like some people think it's a good thing and some people think it's a bad thing. And the people who think it's a good thing think it's a very, very, very good thing and should always be done. And the people who think it's a bad thing are absolutely dead against it. And so you get these two camps of people that neither one of them is necessarily right. They're just opposing.
Right.
What do you think about that, Roger?
Well, I hate saying
Roger?
this. I hate. Oh, look. Oh, wait a
Roger's
minute.
gone away.
No, I'm not gone.
Chris,
Hold on.
can you take it?
Yeah, just that's part of the system that
Oops.
we've been brought into that has to push the duality of the narrative,
Right.
fear and love and hate and all the things, just keeping us from seeing our true nature is that connectedness, and that
Hmm.
these dualisms are truly part of our nature that are there for our entertainment and enjoyment if we use them the way that we, you know, have the ability to use them.
Sorry about that. I had my thing muted.
Oh, that's okay.
Now,
What do you think, Roger?
now, that is kind of weird too because you have the ideal world, which is the mental world, and then you have the material world, which is matter, basically. Okay, mind and matter. So when it comes to reality, you have the Zoroastrians look at the world it, in with a moral reality. You know what I'm saying? So morality does play a part in it. The morals and stuff.
Hmm.
So I mean, like that's kind of tricky too. And I mentioned it before, like in the Old Testament with what was the name of that freaking monster from the abyss? Um,
The
the
Leviathan.
Leviathan. Okay, now back during that time period, they were in competition with Zoroastrianism
Hmm.
because it was all about morality and the religions having a moral standing and stuff. So what happened was is the Jews ended up freaking creating the Leviathan and putting it in their Bible. Now, if you
Hmm.
listen to what that passage says, that completely goes contradiction to what the Zoroastrians believed in. Okay, I was telling you about the good and the evil, and they both have equal force. Well, with the Leviathan and the story about that, it discusses God's will. Okay, and according to their beliefs, God's will travels around the world and nobody has control over it. Whatever happens, happens, and that's it. It's just the will of God. Okay,
Wow.
so
Okay.
that is the moral part of the Jewish beliefs versus the Zoroastrian part. When it comes to morality. So
Hmm.
you kind of have that going on.
So why do you think that we people have this urge to find goodness and to overcome evil? Where do you think that comes from in us? Because if there are just these two forces and they're just like sort of equal and opposite forces, why do we as people choose one thing to be better than another? Is there ultimate goodness, or is it just opinion?
It's tough to call. I mean, for me personally, I mean, which would which would I rather have? I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, look at it. It sucks when you freaking support the bad because bad things happen. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, if you wanted good things to happen in your life, what are you gonna do? You're gonna do good things.
Mm-hmm. Choose the good things, right? Yeah.
I mean, that's just common sense. I don't need a
Mm-hmm.
Bible to freaking know that much. You know what I mean? It's
Mm-hmm.
like, come on, man.
Yeah.
So
And yet, if we didn't have the Bible, Roger, how would we pass these ideas on? For me, the Bible isn't really relevant in the details of it. I mean, there's this guy's thoughts and there's that guy's story and there's this history and all that stuff in there. But the thing that that really is interesting to me are these great concepts, these sort of truths and absolutes. Things like, if you sacrifice yourself, it's better for the people around you, rather than Jesus died on the cross and came back to life. That's one story. But that call to actually do it yourself is a different level. Don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think last week when we were talking about opposites, okay, there's one thing that I did want to bring up, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's self-forgetting. And that's a real tough term for terminology for people to understand, because, like, it's probably one of the most hardest principles there is when it comes to religion and spiritual principles. Okay, like, in order for me to freaking forget myself, I have to give up my selfishness. Okay, so you have self-forgetting versus selfishness. By nature, I'm a selfish person. Okay, so I need to learn how to take myself out of the equation. You see, now that's a lot easier to say than to do. You know what I mean? So that's something that I have to freaking practice through repetition, which nobody likes. Nobody loves to do repetition. But people who do these things over and over again see results. So if you're doing something bad over and over again, you see bad results. If you're doing something good over and over again, you see good results. All right. And another thing I wanted to point out too is an example of something that does happen to people who get involved in this kind of thinking, and there's a reason why they do call it dogma. Mother Teresa is a good example. There's a story about her that a lot of people don't know about, but like with Mother Teresa, like say she had to get on an airplane and travel from one part of the world to another, she would be on the airplane and she'd start grabbing up the free apples and stuff so that she could give them to the kids in the next village she went to. You know what I mean? And she did that. She did that as a habit, and she did a lot of things as a habit, and it became ritualistic to her. Well, during her last days of her life, she said she went through what she called the dark period, where she started doubting that God existed and stuff like that, because everything she was doing was just ritual. It was just habit, things that she had done. You know what I mean? And with people who do things like that, that does happen. And she says the only thing that kept her going was the fact that frickin' her actions created results, positive results. You know what I mean? So getting those apples on the airplane wasn't for God, or it wasn't for herself. It was so that those kids could have apples when she made it to the next small village.
Gosh, how fascinating. You know, last week on the show when we were talking about the prayer of St. Francis, which predates St. Francis, after the show, Roger, you suggested to me that I write it out and say it every day. And when I first started, I did that. And I never do that. I never do that. I've heard this advice all my life about how to read prayers and read things, and I've never done it. But for some reason, after the show, I just took your advice and I did it. And I thought, oh, well, I'll just give it a go. And I've been doing it, and it's so strange. Without me having to try, just by repeating those words, something is changing for me. Some attitude is growing in me, and some ability to start seeing things differently. And I'm finding that to be a very fascinating experience, because I'm almost watching myself change and not making the changes, just reading somebody else's words out aloud. I'm finding that a very, very strange and interesting experience.
Yeah. And
so thank you.
I did the same stuff, and I mean I know exactly what you're talking about. It's amazing, and one thing I had to get over was this idea, like uh, we were talking about, okay, earlier, like um, I have to get over this idea that freaking I'm different from everybody else, okay, and I have to also
Well,
realize that humans by nature we like symbols, okay, and we like freaking rituals. We like all these things. These are a part of us. This is what we seem to always do. We have these rituals and symbols and things like that, and we do these things so that we feel better. Okay.
mm-hmm,
Now
mm-hmm,
they produce results. You know what I mean?
okay.
And that's kind of something that nobody wants to hear, you know what I mean? Like
Mm,
freaking, but it's the truth. If you do these things will happen. Like something will happen because of it. There'll be results from it. So,
mm, mm. Do better, is that what you call connectedness? That thing that all of us, we sort of behave in the same way somehow. What do you think connects us?
No, not at all. We don't act in
No.
the same way. That wouldn't be connectedness. That's like some kind of dystopian future type thing. The connectedness is just those serendipitous moments that where you're thinking of a friend and they happen to call, and you win the
Okay.
lottery numbers off of some numbers that popped in your head, whatever, all the different things. Um, Sometimes it's happening unconsciously, and sometimes very little it's happening consciously, and that's because we've gotten out of touch with ourselves, who we really are, and how connected we are to not only ourselves, the people, humans, but nature, animals, trees, plants, all the things.
Gosh.
And as we start to remember, we are a member of the whole. Remember that we are connected, then we'll start to act that way, and you'll start to see a whole lot of capabilities that we have that we've been neglecting.
Wow. That is
That's my
fascinating.
my opinion
So
anyway.
you think that it's remembering our connectedness that helps us to be connected.
Of course.
Wow. That's duality, isn't it? That's some so
Hmm.
deep and subtle. Well, that was a really, really interesting discussion. And I have a million questions, which unfortunately are going to need to wait until next week because we're at the end of our time. But before we go, I was just wondering if you guys would like to just wrap up, give us some final ideas on where we're going, where we've been, where we come from, what you think, sort of as a result of this conversation. A final thought, do better.
I can't see the future and or predict it, but I just feel like the amount of harmony that we could be having in the world is within our grasp. We just gotta keep being that which we seek in the world.
Wonderful words. Roger, how about you? Final thoughts on duality for today.
I I pretty much believe that duality is a way of peace. You know what I'm saying? And I know that a lot of people don't agree with the concepts that are involved with it because they have had bad experiences from it. But the best I can say is just give it a try. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If something in your life isn't working, try something new. You know what I mean? That's called change. So um, that's the best way I can say when it comes to duality. Usually, when there's something bad happening in my life, it's because I need to do the opposite of what I'm doing at that moment. you know, so
Wow.
so just change.
That is good advice.
You know,
That is good advice.
so
Wow.
that's all.
Okay, well, Roger Hansen live and do better. Thank you very, very much for a fascinating conversation. And we will be back. Thank you, all of you, for joining us today. It's great that you came and listened to us. And we will be here again next week. And as we've said before, we will be looking more deeply into Zoroastrianism and more concepts around this really fascinating subject. So until next week, keep well, everybody. Try something new, be connected, and we'll see you then. Bye,
Bye
guys.
bye.
Bye bye.
See you.
Woohoo.